started recording the session. Okay, we'll start then. So everybody is able to listen, right? Yeah. So this is about the SQL Server auditing, and we'll also discuss about some kind of security related stuff with SQL Server, especially like the HPA, MBA data, like high business impact, medium business impact data protection using the security features provided by SQL Server. So the agenda for today is like we'll first of all identify like why the auditing is required or in what circumstances auditing will be used, and about like what is the auditing, how was the auditing in the older versions of SQL Server compared to auditing in 2008, where like complete revamp of auditing was done in SQL Server, and again like some lot of enhancements in 2012 with respect to auditing. We'll also go through some of the performance issues and or the other considerations for the auditing. And we'll have a demo after that on the auditing, followed by the discussion about the securing HPA MBA data. So what are the options available in SQL Server, like to secure the data at rest? By rest I mean like the data files, log files, and backups. So protecting all that information. In HPA MBA kind of environment, we also need that level of security in addition to auditing. So is the volume sufficient?
Yes, Ravi.
Okay.
Yes, Ravi.
So coming to why we need auditing, like especially like the current circumstance, like the reason for this auditing brown bag is especially like we had a recent protection, like data protection related things happened. Risk assessment program happened, and they as part of the risk analysis and risk assessment, like they wanted more to identify about the personal identifiable information, like who is using that information, like kind of audit that kind of information. And also like in general, auditing is used for regulatory compliance, like any public sectors or other areas where we have like information like confidential information and all, like they use auditing for the regulatory compliance, and especially like confidential information like HR database or any other kind of payroll and other information, like for example those are confidential credit card information. So how like to track like who is using or who is accessing, like whether authorized users are using that or not. So that's the kind of some of those are the reasons why we go for the auditing. Like, so how it was in 2005, I am just giving this overview because like some of the PIA data like royalty or RevRec and other things, like they still have SQL 2005, so which is a discontinued version, but I'm just giving one slide to make an understanding on like how where we started and what are the features now in 2008 and on. So with 2005 we had like very limited tools.
Ravi, are you sharing something?
Okay.
Are you sharing?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Let me start sharing the screen. So let me know once you are able to see that. Okay, you are able to see, right?
Not yet. Yeah, it's coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the slide I have gone through the agenda, like, and then like the reasons why we require auditing. So, and now we are currently in this slide where we are.
Yeah, now
yeah. This is the slide where we are currently on like 2005, like how we used to do the auditing. So it used to be a combination of tools in 2005, like SQL Profiler or SQL Trace. So there is a difference between Profiler. Profiler is the GUI tool, whereas the SQL Trace is just like the normal using like the backend kind of configuration, like using the APIs or the stored procedures, system stored procedures, and from the backend, we can go and configure the trace like using, it's called a server-side trace. So SPSet trace, we'll use those procedures to start the trace, stop the trace, and flush the information to the files or store it in the database. So because GUI, we cannot run it like 24/7 cross 365. So that's when the SQL trace using the server-side trace is what we used to heavily depend upon in 2005 and older versions, because it doesn't have GUI, it's a command line thing. So we can go and configure using the built-in out-of-box stored procedures provided by SQL Server, and that's how we used to go and audit the information. So the compared to Profiler, like the performance is improved, but still like there's a lot of overhead with that, because a lot of information gets into the trace, and it's not only meant for like auditing. The tool is meant for like performance tuning for everything. So it's not a dedicated tool for an auditing like. And similarly, we had some kind of auditing of successful fail logins that we could enable, but that's also a partial kind of feature. To some extent, in 2005, they introduced these login servers or the DDL triggers, where we can leverage them for the custom auditing. But at the same time, like the difficulty with that is like you don't have a fine-grained auditing, or there's a lot of overhead with the triggers, like in the transaction context and the delay with the transactions. And it's basically change of the code. Like some of the code we have to do, and for each and every table we have to go and write that. So a lot of overhead will be there. So it's not a full-fledged kind of an auditing. And so that's the main thing like in the older versions. So basically we are missing that fine-grained level auditing. Like for example, if I want to audit a particular table, like accessed by which particular set of users, so this table, this user, so that level of granularity we didn't have. We just have like at a database level we can configure some information about object ID it was storing, but that's not sufficient enough because it just stores by the ID, not by the name. So it's very difficult to filter and get the information. It's like too much information used to get into the trace. So coming to 2008, like it's kind of audit was completely rewritten. Like they had like a new concept altogether. So this is mainly on the 4 different goals like security, performance, manageability, and discoverability. So definitely the performance will be very good compared to SQL trace, because we have a fine-grained auditing now in 2008. So exactly whatever the information is required, we will audit only that information. So the number of data, the amount of data collected in the trace is significantly reduced. And on top of that, because we use extended event concept in 2008 onwards, so the performance is very much improved. And we have like synchronous or asynchronous method of auditing because of the support of extended events. So synchronous means like the audit will wait until the transaction like is completed, and it's like as soon as it's completed, it will go and write to the audit. So it's not like the auditing will be delayed after the. So along with the transaction, the audit also will be entry is also happening in a synchronous fashion. So obviously that will affect the performance also, because the transaction and this one is happening like in a synchronous fashion. Whereas by changing the queue delay parameter in the server audit level, we can control that to asynchronous. So by default, it is like one second is the delay. So that's like right now by default, it's asynchronous model we use in the auditing. So that way the transactions will not get delayed with the audit. By enabling the audit, transactions will continue. Asynchronously, the data will be written to the audit, like flushed to the audit file. So now DML, DDL can be audited. And the key thing here is like the state of the audit is maintained. In the past, like whenever the restart was there, service restart and all, the audit used to stop. So we have to go and configure a SQL Server agent job or something to go and use a server-side trace to start the trace, stop the trace, control what happens when the SQL Server is recycling and all. There is a chance of some of the audit events getting missed during that time frame of recycling of the services and things like that. So those kind of disadvantages used to be there. But now that state of audit is maintained, you don't have to start the audit or stop the audit. So if the audit was on before the server was restarted, so the audit will continue as soon as the server is up. So the same audit will continue collecting. We don't have to start it again or anything like that. So it's much more control and state is maintained. And the other key things are here now, like in 2008 onwards, like we can write the audit events to the Windows security log, which is a tamper-proof kind of a mechanism for storing the audit. Because just writing audit to a file, the file can be manipulated or tampered by maybe a DBA or like some other person who has access or local admin access there. But Windows security log, once it is written, security log is kind of already proven in terms of the audit and the security related stuff. So it was well established standards they follow. And on top of that, we can use the SCOM agent, like ACS agent. There is a audit collection services agent of SCOM. So that SCOM agent can be deployed on all the SQL servers. Already SCOM will be there, so we can leverage this feature of SCOM, whereby SCOM will go and agent will go and pull all the Windows security log specific information. We can select like these are the specific events you want to collect. So automatically all those will be consolidated and taken by the SCOM to a centralized server. So that's the advantage is there with the Windows security auditing to the writing to the Windows security log instead of a file. And another advantage is like auditing can now be integrated with a policy-based management, which means like you have multiple SQL servers and all. You can control using the policy-based management, like which audit is how the audit, where audit is running, where the audit has failed, which server it is failed, which server it is running. So we can have more control using the policy-based management with the audit like. So this is the architecture, high-level architecture on how the 2008 uses auditing. You have something called as a server audit and a database audit. So server audit is like started at a master database level. So that will go and create a file. You will give the path where the audit has to be, files have to be created, and other parameters like whether it's asynchronous or asynchronous, the queue delay parameter will be passed and few other parameters will be passed. So that way the server audit is started, and any server level events like for example shutdown of the server, restart of the server, backup restore of a database. So anything at the server level that will be directly audited at a server audit level itself. But if you need to audit at a database level, for example select on a particular table, insert on a particular table, DDL on a particular table, or some activity on a particular schema. So those are like a database related stuff. So that needs a database audit specification in addition to the server audit specification. So it's like server audit and database audit is a one-to-one mapping. So you cannot have a database audit specification without a server audit linked to that. So that's a one-to-one mapping is there. And so you can have multiple such database audit specifications. And in addition to the server audit, you also have a specification for that. So you can run multiple things, like for each database, you can run a different kind of audit specification, and everything should be linked to its own server audit specification. Like, so we'll get more details when we go through the demos. So comparing to 2012, so how the auditing is improved in 2012 compared to 2008. So this was something like we discussed in the past for 2012 enhancements. So earlier older versions used to support only in Enterprise Edition, but now it is supported in all editions with auditing. And the improved resilience feature is one of the key feature. In the past, like whenever the auditing is failed, we have only two options, like either to continue the transactions or to shut down the SQL server. So if you feel like the SQL Server transactions are very critical, or a SQL Server is critical, and we don't care about if audit is failed for some reason, I want the server to be up and the transactions should continue without impacting the business. That is the case we used to go for continue option. And other option shutdown is like where the auditing is critical rather than the business. Like I do not want any transaction to happen without the transaction returned to the audit log. So if that is the auditing was a key thing, then we used to go with the shutdown parameter. So which means like if auditing cannot be done, like for example log is full for that audit, wherever the audit trail is written, that drive is full. So audit cannot happen. So in that case, the shutdown option, what it does is shut down the SQL Server because you can't audit anymore, because confidentiality of the auditing of the information is more important in that case. But right now with 2012, they also have another parameter called fail operation, which means like it doesn't fail the SQL Server, but the transaction, whatever the current transaction on that database or whatever is happening, that operation will fail because it didn't write to the audit. So that is another option we have, like fail operation. So we still have the old parameters like continue and shutdown. Now they have a new parameter, fail operation. But by default, we recommend continue operation for most of our auditing stuff, so that the things will still continue with audit. And the other parameters like max files is there, and automatic recovery from network failure. As I mentioned earlier, like during the network failures and all, there is a chance of some of the audit records are not written properly. So those kind of audit recovery is enhanced now. Like also we have an option with user-defined audit. Like you can go and write your own custom stuff to the audit using some kind of APIs that are provided. The record filtering is one of the key feature. Like for example, if you want to audit like a particular schema, that schema can be used by multiple users. It may have several such tables, but at a record filtering, like you can pass a where clause at the server audit level saying like, I want only this object of that schema. So then in that case, though the audit events are written for the entire schema, anybody, any access to the schema, but only the information for that specific object that you gave in the where clause, only that information goes to the audit trail log or the actual audit file. So the rest of the information gets filtered there. So this will is used extensively for filtering the audit to reduce or to improve the granularity of the audit level. In the demos, we will be seeing that how the where clause can be used to further filter the audit. Like that means we are still auditing some events, but for writing to the audit log, we are trying to filter like what has to be written or the predicate. We can give a predicate on what has to be filtered. Like so, the where clause is used like a filter on top of the audit. And the stack information is another extended feature of 2012. In the past, like for example, if somebody goes and you have a stored procedure, in that stored procedure you have a select from a particular table. When that stored procedure is executed, internally it's firing the select statement. So if you have given like audit to for select, like anything on the table, anybody selected on the table, you have included that in the audit. So you will get an entry like select star from customer is what is the audit, that is the statement that is being executed. But whereas you never know like this statement executed through this procedure called P1 procedure, which has internally this statement. Nobody knows like which procedure or like which function or which view has gone and internally triggered the select statement. So now in the 2012 level, in the stack information, if you see, in addition to the select statement, what is already there in the T-SQL statement, you also find in the extended event information saying like, this is the procedure that is executed, which internally triggered this select star from customer table. So that level of granularity is provided by the stack information. We can see that in the demo also. Like.
Hey Ravi.
Yes.
So, this much granular information, is it going to impact? Oh, okay, you are already on slide of performance. Okay.
Not a problem. Like so, in terms of performance, yeah, it will. So this granularity information, it's just like additional column. So it will have additional column which has a stack information. So the stack information is especially used like one scenario what I gave is to find the root cause or like whichever has triggered that select statement. If you want to find out like how the select statement came, whether it is just a normal select statement or was it through a procedure. If you want to also know like which procedure has executed the statement, so that means more detailed audit you will have. And in addition to that, the stack information also has like IP address of that specific user. So some additional things that you want to dig into, this information will give us that. It's only one additional column. So
but the question is the entry in the audit log. Okay, is it happening synchronous or asynchronous? I mean to say, the control is given back once query is executed completely, or it's like user has to wait for the result of the query till the audit log is complete.
So if you have given the synchronous option, which means the queue delay is 0 if you have given, then the audit will have to write first, like the audit entry will be written, and then only the transaction will be committed. Because it's a guaranteed audit, right? Like it's a synchronous, just like your mirroring, where like you commit there and then you acknowledge like it's done. Otherwise, you both have to fail kind of thing because the auditing is you want it to be synchronous. Yeah. But auditing, when you think here, it's not like you may be updating a billion row table, but only one entry will go to the audit saying like update on whatever the update statement you ran for that billion row table. That line only will go there. So it will have only metadata information, the actual select statement. It doesn't have the individual records what you all updated. Whatever the statement you ran to update is what is recorded in the audit. So that way the metadata is what is going to the audit. So that's why like it will be having less information compared to your old other mechanisms of audit like change data capture or change tracking. So those have like detail level like old data, new data, all that stuff. But here you will have like whatever the statement you executed. If that statement belongs to your database audit, that specific table or schema, then only that the metadata information of that is written there.
Okay.
So in terms of performance impact, it depends on, especially on the type of the workload, how intensive workload you have, or how many transactions are happening, or what are the criteria you have given in the audit. And also the improvements are like we found like 11 to 45% improvement when compared to the normal SQL trace. That is, the SQL trace what I'm talking about is not the profiler trace, it is the server side trace without the GUI. It's a backend server side trace, which itself is like a optimized version of trace. But compared to that, it's still like 11 to 45% performance-wise more improved here with the right from SQL 2008, the auditing, the database auditing that we are discussing about. And audit obviously has more CPU usage because it has more CPU cycles is required. So on a heavily used CPU used system, so we need more considerations like we need to do a lot of testing to go and implement the audit, because we do not want this extra overhead of audit is going to impact that already the server if it's on high CPU. So those kind of things, the test cases, we have to evaluate performance testing and other things. But in the normal medium CPU usage and all, it should be fine to go and implement. And the storage is another area we need to think about when we are implementing audit, because these logs keep on generating, and those will be keep on running. Every time automatically server restart and all, the same log it will be written, and depending on the size, if you have reached the size of the file, then it will have a rollover, it will roll over to the next file. So it depends on how many files you have selected and all, it will keep on rolling over. So now you have to deal with that audit log files. So whether you are archiving that or whether you are copying it to another UNC path, so that control has to be done. So otherwise the storage, it can quickly fill up the drives eventually, depending on the volume of audit you are doing.
Ravi,
Yeah.
coming to this audit log part, so the file size, is it in a compressed format kind of a thing?
It is not in a compressed format, but it is not in a meaningful format. Like we cannot, anyone cannot open the file and read the file. It can be only read through the SQL Server API, which is the audit function what is provided by SQL Server. Just like your BCP when you are giving native mode, when you open the file, you can't directly read the information there. So similar format it will be written there. Only through using the audit function you can go and read the that specific file.
Okay.
Yeah. And especially when you have the database being mirrored here, so in that case we have to configure the auditing on the mirror also. So the way this happens is like we need to use the same GUID that is used in the GUID that was used on the source server. So whatever, when we created an audit, a GUID will be assigned to the audit, and the audit log file will have the details about the GUID and other things. So we can query these system tables like system audits, sys audits, and other tables are there, like some metadata DMVs are there. So using that we can get the GUID name. That GUID number we have to use when we are going and creating the audit on the mirror. So that way it will maintain the state information and other stuff, especially in a database mirroring kind of scenario. But in all other cases, like when you are creating the audit, you will only pass the name of the audit. Automatically the GUID, everything it will take internally, whatever it will go and randomly generate. Only in situation of mirroring, you will have to go and get the GUID from the source and then use the same GUID for maintaining the audit. That way, like when you are doing the failovers and all, like SQL Server will take care internally. So this is how we manage the audit data. Like so on the right hand side you see like multiple SQL servers are there, assuming like, so these are like different SQL servers hosting different applications. So each server like PinODS, or maybe another server like campaign management, we have another e-commerce. So each one is having some kind of PII data, for example the personally identifiable information. So those set of tables are there for each of those. So we set up, assuming like we set up audit on each of that. So we can configure the traces to be either written locally, the audit trail file locally to the each server, or we can set up all these to write to a UNC share, common UNC share, and that share can completely exist on a totally different server, which is a file server. So in which case we'll just give the UNC path for each of the audit. So each of the SQL server, when the audit is happening, that file will be written to the file server. So the file server will have all the accumulated audit files of multiple servers. And the file server, we can have only read access to the read access can be given only to the security administrator or whoever is dealing with the audits. SQL Server account can just have only the write access to that, so that it will keep on writing and nobody can read from that from that path. Then from there, what we can do is these individual audit files that are collected from multiple servers can be consolidated using SSIS kind of a package. In the SSIS package, we can write a stored procedure or whatever. We can invoke that specific job or a procedure to go and use the audit function to extract the file and dump it to a SQL Server table. So we have a select command which we can use an audit function. That function understands the file format. So when you pass that like /star, so all the files it will read, or if you pass the exact name, it will go and read that specific file or not. So that information we can load it to dump it into a SQL Server table. And that SQL Server 2008 on the left-hand side, probably that could be completely a security audit administrator, maybe handling that SQL Server, or maybe one or two such audit administrator level people will have access there. And not every DBA will be having access there. So that's a consolidated information we have in a table from which we can use the SSRS reports and then get a meaningful report of what the audit happened. So that way, when the financial people or the tracking people come, so they can go to the audit reports from that from the final thing, like with consolidated information. Or we can even use Excel pivots on top of the SQL Server database. We can put in the pivot and get in audit data in a meaningful format, or it's a readable format for the. This is for the analysts, audit analysts, or like whoever the financial audit people who are conducting the audit. They can go through those reports. Like.
Hey Ravi.
Yes.
I mean, I got you, like we can load the file in SQL Server and do the analytics, but like, do we know the purpose of, first place writing it to a file server? I mean file system.
Because if you are writing locally on that SQL Server, if you are putting it into the D drive or for example E drive or F drive of SQL Server, maybe the DBA has a local admin access on that box and he can go and delete the file, right? So to so that kind of tamper issues may be there. So that way, like the file server, if you are putting it to a UNC share or a file server, and that file server, maybe DBA doesn't have any access to the file server at all. So nobody has a local admin access, or nobody can TS into the box and can tamper with that. And we will have only write access to SQL account, service account. It doesn't even have like read access to read the file or copy the file or things like that. So that way, like we'll have more security because that file server can be maintained by completely auditing team itself. Like, so where the DBAs or the system administrators doesn't have access to that box. Like. So that is the advantage of dedicating it to a different UNC path altogether, rather than putting it into the individual SQL servers.
Is that going to be a standard that you're going to be putting in place, saying that in order to do audit logs, you have to transfer them off the server as they're written, or are you going to write them locally first, transfer them, or does it just depend?
So it depends, like from a performance point of view, writing locally will be the best performance because over the network it doesn't have to transfer the data. But it is a case-to-case basis, like it depends on how much of volume they are writing. So if it is like lesser volume, probably like writing to the UNC path is faster. And if they feel like the audit team or the PII team recommends to directly write to a external path rather than the local maintenance of this, so in that case we can go with that. So it's a case-to-case based approach. We can make a decision about like.
So would an audit entry, let's say I do a select all, whatever, is that audit entry going to be the same size as the transaction, or is it always going to be the same kind of size on average?
Always it's going to be the same size, because if you are giving like select star from customer, you will have only that select star from customer is the only line that is written to the audit. You will not have the actual data or anything, like you will not see the actual values of the data. You will only have a metadata called like a column. This is the time when the audit happened. This is the event is like select, and this is the service principal name or the username who ran this command, and the command which is like select star from customer is what the command they have run, and some additional information about the server name or the instance name and time and other specific information, object ID, what is the specific table. So some kind of metadata information, and the external information like IP address and other stuff also will be written. It only has the metadata.
Great. So that means the storage requirements are going to be significantly smaller.
Significantly smaller, exactly.
Okay.
So that's why I was giving the example of a billion row table. If you update, you will have only one line of the information in the audit still. because and like you bulk inserted, you would took a big file and try to bulk insert onto the SQL server, like it may have like 1 million records, and you may have an audit for insert. So you will still have one entry called like this bulk insert from so and so file is that is the actual, this is the file name and this is the path where the file was loaded from. It doesn't have any record information of individual records of that the actual file.
And then
Hi,
for
Ravi.
sorry, go for it.
No problem. Robert, you can say first.
For the rollover perspective, do the logs roll over every hour, every 24 hours, or how does it close out the log?
It is depending
file?
on the number of files we selected and the maximum size. If I give maximum size as 1 GB and for example rollover is like 50 files, that means first file it will wait until it reaches 1 GB. So once it reaches 1 GB, it will go to the rollover file and it will create a brand new file, and that file will again grow for 1 GB. Then it will go to the next rollover file. It depends on the rollover file count what you have given.
So if it's in the UNC, it's going to lock that 1 GB file out until it logs it out.
Yes, as long as SQL Server is writing to the file, it's exclusive lock to SQL Server, so nobody can open or rename or copy the file.
Thanks.
Hi, Ravi. This
Yes,
is Paul. I just got a concern. So if we put the log file into the UNC drive, so is that makes the job more risky for the large transaction? For example, for the MSD portfolio, sometimes we would have a lot of data need to be written into the into the database every day, and if we just put the audit information in the network, that makes the job more vulnerable. And I think that would be one of the risks I would have a little bit concerned. So how do we address that?
Yeah, the two things here, like one thing you need to identify is auditing is it's writing only the metadata, it's not writing the actual data. So even if you are dealing with large data, but the actual information written to the log will be very small. And the second thing is like in terms of whatever we write like into the UNC path, by default you go for asynchronous option. That is what we recommend, and that is the out of box it is asynchronous. So that way like your transaction doesn't have any impact. Transaction will continue, and asynchronously the record, the header or header entry or the metadata information will go to the audit. So even if it's a UNC path, like definitely we have to put it in the same data center or something, or with a high bandwidth or whatever. But the information flow across the network will be like only metadata flow compared to the actual data.
But as my understanding, even in the synchronized option, if the UNC drive, is not reachable for the current transactions, the job would still fail, right?
In that case, it depends on the parameter. When you created the audit, I told you three parameters are there: continue and shutdown and fail operation. So if you are given continue, even if the audit is not accessible, it will stop writing to the UNC path. It will continue. Your transactions will continue. If you are giving shutdown, that is when there is a risk, because like its audit file is the path is not accessible, so it will shut down the SQL server. And the third option is fail operation, is when like the transaction will be failed because it's not able to write to the audit. So continue is a parameter that we normally use. So usually we should not have that problem.
But if we select the continue option, then that means the log information would not be reliable, right? Because sometimes even someone, some unauthorized author or the user access the object, but because we use that option and during the audit creation, we may still miss that log information. So I think it is a dilemma. I think we'd better think about to use the UNC option, right?
Yeah.
Because,
so that's why we normally recommend like initially to write to the local drive or whatever, and then from there like some other job or something will go and periodically like a job or something will trigger, and it will go and copy the file, take the file to and write it to the UNC path. So that should be a better option. And definitely, if the file share is the UNC is the only thing, then we have to make sure that UNC, that file share, is accessible and it's kind of on a it's on a cluster or like file share cluster or whatever. So I mean, we have to take all kinds of precautions there, and like high bandwidth or like availability of the file share. So we should make sure like the clustering for the file share. So if we decide that, but normally the writing locally and then copying is also a good option. Like.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
So protecting about the audit data, so same thing that we are talking about. So in addition to writing to the log file, the audit trail file, which will be written to locally or to the UNC path, whatever path, other option is to write to security log. So that way, like you have, because security log is like meant for like tamper-proof kind of thing. It's a proven technology. So we can leverage the feature of Windows security and write the audit stuff directly to the security log and don't have to manage about the files and other stuff. So who will take from the security log to the thing to wherever the consolidated thing? So that is again like SCOMS, ACS service, like audit control service, what I mentioned. So we can leverage that. There are a lot of other tools available there. So that tool can use to read the security log periodically. It will connect to each and every box, like wherever this auditing is configured, it will poll and get all the security related stuff. It may have additional filters for finding only SQL specific information, and then directly that will go and consolidate and put it into a centralized server. So that way, nothing, no files, no handling of the files, but everything is into like Windows security log. So. But for that, we need to enable some of this stuff. Like one is to use the audit poll utility and set the success failure options. And we should also have like a privilege like to the SQL Server service account called as like it's generate security audits privilege. So that privilege has to be given to the SQL Server service account. We can do that using a secpol.msc file. We can run that and then go and give this security audit policy to the SQL Server account. So then SQL Server account can go and write to the security log. Similarly, we have an option to write to the application log also. So now it's time for the demo. So probably demo will clarify some of your other doubts. So let us quickly go to the demo. So right now I'm doing this demo for SQL 2008 R2 because like most of our audit stuff, like some of the SQL servers are mostly on R2. So I want to make sure like this works for R2 and 2008. So the same stuff will definitely work for 2012 also. So we are trying to create one database which is called like PII audit database with a dummy size and parameters I have given for the database size. So now you find like on the left side like this database I refresh. So there's a blank database created. So now I'm trying to use like we have some commands to stop the audit and all, but right now I don't have anything created, so I'm skipping those stuff. Let me just increase this size so that oh, I don't have the mouse. So. Okay, one moment. So let me just, so first thing to configure is a server audit. So server audit, as it indicates, it's a server level thing. So we have to go to the master database context. And so I need to create the audit. So let me go and create the server audit specific stuff. So before even configuring the audit, so let me create some blank objects here. So I have this database, it's a blank database. So let me create some objects before even I go for the tracing. So I'm creating one table called customer. It has like a couple of columns. And I am creating one table called address. It has some address specific details. So the first one is just to check whether the table is there. We are dropping, then we are creating a blank table. So these are blank tables. Now I'm trying to create a procedure called USP underscore customer P customer. The procedure does nothing but like selecting from the customer table. So it's as simple as like that. And I'm also creating a view called V underscore customer. So this view is basically like in that view we are trying to select one column from the customer table. So it's a simple, very simple view, which is nothing but selecting a column from the table. So now I have some like in the database, I have a procedure, a table, and two tables and one view. Now let me go and create auditing for this. So again, I went to the master database context because we are trying to create a server audit here. So I am in the master database as you see on the left. So I'm creating a server audit, like so create server audit, audit name, and then to the file, which is a path. We have to give the path, and this is the maximum size for this audit file. That means when the file SQL Server is creating a brand new file, and the size of max size of this file should be 1 GB, which means the file, it will continue to write to the same file until the file reaches 1 GB, and as soon as it reaches 1 GB, the max underscore rollover files counter will inform like to create another file to that to roll over the subsequent audit information to that new file. And the same logic will apply. It will again try to grow that file by 1 GB and go to the next rollover file. So I have given 80. So that means like up to 80 GB of information or 80 files will be created here. I mean, till that 80 files, it will keep on automatically doing the stuff. So this is an integer parameter. We can give the integer range or whatever. And the delay parameter is like it's indicating it's a 1 second delay. So asynchronously it is writing after 1 second. And I have given like continue on failure. So I don't want the business or server to be stopped if something had an issue with audit, because this is not like a regulatory compliance, or we are just for the PII related stuff. So, and again, it is case to case basis. If you feel like that auditing is more critical there on that specific box, then we can evaluate the parameter. So by default, when the audit is created, it is not enabled or it's not started. So we have to start it with a parameter called alter server with the state is on. So this will start the, so I think I didn't execute this. So let me go execute this. Now the audit is created, and the name is like PII underscore audit is the name of the audit server audit. So now I am starting the server audit because it's stopped state by default. So now after that is done, so if you see like there is a table which will be created. So automatically you have like some of the entries. So this one, some previous entries are there. So I'm selecting star. So all the information is coming. But so this is the file. If you see under the D column. So if you see this folder, so you have like, so this was the file like earlier when I had a demo in the morning or afternoon, like in the Redmond timing. So one file is created. So because I gave a star there, so it is trying to, all the files it will read and it will dump to the SQL Server. Like, I mean, it will give us the select, that select statement is reading multiple files here because I have given star there. But this is the file, which is the recent file, which is created just now. So we find like 9:41 PM. So I just take like only top 5 just to make sure the recent ones are there. So this action AUSC indicates like you have something like a metadata kind of thing, like audit is started now. So that is the information is written here. Server level audit is started. And you can also query this table to see like whether the audit is started or like server audit, what is the information. So it shows like this is the name, server audit name, PII underscore audit. This is the GUID that SQL Server assigned. This is the date when it is created. And the principal is like the user who created and other stuff like file and parameters like queue delay. So this is a metadata about the server audit. And database level, right now we haven't created anything. So let me go and create the database level audit specification. So what we are doing is for the audit level specification, so all we need to do is like create audit specification. For it has to be one-to-one mapping to server audit, right? So for server and what is the server audit name? So that means we are linking this database audit specification called PII audit DB spec to the server audit called PII underscore audit. So that's why the server audit should be existing before we even start with the database audit. And database audit specification is required only if you want to audit at a database level. If you want only at a server level, like for example, shutdown event, a restart event, or a backup restore kind of event at a server level, then you may not even need a database audit specification. But because we are interested to audit at a database level, because I want to identify whoever has done a select, insert, update, delete on a particular table, so that means these are related to a database, so I need to create a database audit specification here. So let me go ahead and create a database audit specification here. So, but before that, like, so I need to first change the context to this specific database, the user database called PII audit, because this is a database specification. So I have to be in a context of a specific database to do that audit, right? So now I went and changed my context to this database and I created an audit specification. So as soon as I do that, so if you see here, like, database audit specifications table will have an entry about this information, when it is started and things like that. So now after this is created, now we can start the audit specification. So which will be, because by default it will be off, so we have to start that. So now the auditing, any information like what we gave here, so if we are doing any of these things like select on this customer, insert on the customer, update on the customer, delete on the customer, so that should go to the audit. So that's what, because auditing is running now. So let me add some records here. So let me take a customer table, and I'll give one record here to the customer table. So I'm doing an insert of a particular record. So if I quickly go to the look for the top 5 events in a descending order in terms of time. So the first event should be my audit, which is the insert statement. It shows action as insert. So it will have like a metadata specific thing. So to find out which is the permission specific information, column permissions, some other details, additional details, server principal ID and the database principal ID, which is nothing but the server login, and this is the user. So you will also have the names. These are IDs, but similarly you will have names. So this is the object ID, that is the object, which is a customer database, which is the object, and the type, it is a classification type. So which account has caused this thing? So Ravikona is the account I used to run this, and my account is having like a DBO, is part of DBO, because any sysadmin by default will be a database owner. So because I have audited here for the DBO, if you see my audit specification, I have given any of this select, insert, update, delete on customer by DBO level user. So that means any sysadmin or anybody who is a part of DB_owner role, so only those are classified as the DBO users. So that means this audit only works if I log in and try to do something, because I have that level of access. But if I log in as a public user without having any database owner or any such thing, if I am just a normal public user, or if I just have a database reader role and I have select to this particular table, in that case, if I log in as that user and try to run, my information won't be audited. And if you want everything to be audited, like whether it's a normal user or a DBO or anybody, so you have to give public here. So public means anybody who is having access to this table, irrespective of whether it's a DBO level person or it's a reader person, writer, or if it's like a sysadmin. So everybody will be audited when you are giving public. So usually you will be using the public, we should use when we are using this PI audit, especially for our application specific stuff. Like if you see here on the right side, so you will have like additional details, like what is the server instance, we got it from the database name, which is audited, and this is the principal schema and the object name customer, and this is the exact statement, like what is the insert statement that we ran. So in this case, because in the insert statement itself I have given the values, so you are able to see this information. But whereas if it was a bulk insert or anything like that, or you give select insert, insert select, you will still have like insert select, but you won't have the data here. So in this case, the data is seen because we are giving the values in one statement. So these are the audit file names and other information like. So let me just do a insert select kind of thing to give some more. Yeah.
Hey Ravi, so if we do an insert via stored procedure where the insert column names in insert statement will be passed as some parameter at runtime, will that be also logged, like what parameter was passed?
So if you are doing for an like through a stored procedure, like let us take an example of a select here. Like already I have a procedure called USP_this. This is the procedure I have, like USPP customer, and the procedure is nothing but it is doing a select from customer, right? So by default, if I just execute select star from customer, so it will only have in the audit like select is there, because we are auditing for select. If you see here in the audit trail, you will have an entry like only for select here. On the top entry if you take, so right now it's only select is there and select star from customer. Now if you take and execute a procedure here, so select star from customer. So now you go and run the procedure. So in that case, the procedure, though you are running the procedure, the exact SQL statement is what is. So I take this procedure and I run this as exec and the procedure. So in this case, that means you assume like I don't have any, I haven't given like audit for the procedure, right? I have given only audit for select statement on the customer. So, but still this procedure is internally triggering the select statement, but still that will be audited. And what will be audited is the select star from customer is what is audited. It won't audit the fact like this procedure has called this, because this is not like 2012, but this is 2008 and R2. So what it will audit is like this procedure internally went and hit the customer table, and there is a select on the customer was happened, and there is an audit database specification indicating like you audit whenever a select from customer happened. So now if you go and see here, so you will find an entry, one more entry for the select star from customer. So one more select here, and it again shows like you have select star from customer. So irrespective of once you gave like select on this table or like insert on this table, whether the insert is done directly with insert select or insert with values or execution through the procedure which internally triggered the insert, all the cases that insert will be logged. Which answers which should be your question. Yeah.
Okay, so even though we pass a runtime parameter in insert statement via stored procedure, it will log the same whatever is there in third row currently.
So in the third row, if you have given like within the insert, like you have given in the procedure, like insert into customer, like at P1 comma at P2, like that you have given, and the P1, P2 is what you passed in the execute procedure. So internally, because finally it went and ran that insert into that parameters. In this case, it may not write the actual values, but it will just show the at P1 comma at P2. I mean, insert statement will be shown here with the parameterized related information only.
Okay.
Okay. So similarly, right now I am going and trying to select from a view. For example, right now I have a view called v underscore customer. So what I'll do is like instead of doing the select from customer, I'll say select star from the v underscore customer. So I am selecting the view, and I didn't audit the view. I only audited the customer. But this view internally, I'm querying the view, but the view is internally querying the select from the customer, right? And select name from customer is what internally it is running. And we have an audit for select on customer. So any column of the customer, if you are selecting, it will automatically write to the log. So you will still have like, you will find one entry called select from customer happened. So one more select, third select, this is from the view. But if it was 2012, you could have seen like this has come from the view instead of the direct actual select.
Ravi, I have a question here.
Yes.
So the view is created with the customer table.
Yes.
So if I have an audit on view
yes.
as well, means along with the customer tables, in that case, if I am trying to do a query on a view, is it going to add 2 entries?
Yeah, it will have 2 entries. I mean, assuming you have one more audit for select, right? So in that case, it will have like the fact like you have queried the view. So the view you have given in auditing. So that means you use that view. It will write an entry for that view, and you will have it will have one more entry because the view internally used a select, and that select is also you have given for audit. So in that case, it will have 2 different entries.
Okay.
So right now, like I am trying to do like I have a test file which has like some values here. So I'm trying to insert here. I changed the 10 to 10 because already I gave one record with 1. So I have a primary key. So I just want to make sure the primary key it won't hit the issue. So I am trying to load from a file. I am inserting like 3 records here. So this is an example for 3 records, but it could be like a billion records you may have inserted. But when you go and query the audit trail file, so it will only record the fact like there was a bulk insert happened. So it won't have individuals. So it just shows like insert, and the actual statement it will show here like a bulk insert happened from this table. So this is kind of metadata only. So it doesn't have the all the individual records, like if it's a billion row table or whatever you are doing. And similarly, like if you are deleting, so the delete will be written. And even if you are trying to truncate the entire table, like right now I'm trying to truncate the entire table, so it will be still written as a audit entry for the delete, because the truncate internally is like it's trying to delete the individual records. So if you see that, so you can.
Ravi.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So how about if we have multiple inserts in the same bucket? Should we have multiple entry in the final audit information, or we just have one?
So if you are giving like, if you selected like insert into like, for example, this is the one. So if you type here like copy and paste here, and like, so these kind of inserts, if you have given with the different values here, so each one will be triggering one audit event. Because this is an individual statement you have run, whether it is your connection or whatever connection, each one will have an implicit commit internally, right? So each one will go and everything will be one statement level. So this statement will be, now in this case, it will have like two events. If I select both of these and like execute, so it should have like 2 events, like 2 inserts happened with different values what you have given. Because you are running 2 inserts here. You are not giving like insert into something like select star from something, right? If you give like insert into something with select star from something, then it will have only one statement. But if you are giving individual things here, it will have multiple entries.
Okay, thank you.
So as you can see here, the truncate statement I have ran. So the truncate internally is a delete internally. So the delete is what it shows as it's recorded. So it's not like if you truncate, you will miss in the audit. It will be still audited because you inserted, you audit for delete. If you haven't used a delete here, then it won't audit here.
So Ravi, even the multiple inserts, if we do in a begin tran and commit tran block, still will it record all the insert statement?
I hope it should still take it into the individual inserts, but I mean, I didn't give a try. We can quickly give a try here. But to my understanding, so everything that is going to the server, right? So this is the statement that is going to the server is what it is writing to the log. So in case of bulk insert, all the thing that is going to the server is the bulk insert statement, right? So internally, how the SQL server is handling the bulk insert is different, but the statement that went to the engine is what the bulk insert. So that is how it is logging. So in this case, I mean, my assumption is like it should have like two different things, but we can just give a try here to make sure like it will satisfy our confusion. Like, so let's go and select the specific thing here. So if you see here, two inserts are there. So I'm giving top 5 always, so that's why you will filter the other ones. So basically, because we ran two inserts, right? It's like under one transaction, but we have given like two statements. So both statements went to the SQL Server engine. Each statement went in separately. So, so the thing, so that's about this audit here. So then what we could do additionally here is like the same stuff we can do for the for example for the 2012 by using a where clause. So the only difference here is in case of 2012 with record filtering option that I was talking about. So if you see here, there is a where clause. You can pass the where clause here. So this is an example is like, for example, you have given like in the audit specification, for example, you gave here like instead of adding like select insert on this customer table, let us assume like all these belong to a particular schema called like sensitive data or some schema name. So you just give like add select on this particular schema. Anything, all the tables in that schema is what is going to get audited automatically. But now in the server side audit trace, you can say like where object name equal to address. So then what happens is like though individual things are audited, anything in that schema like address table, customer table, multiple tables are that in the schema and you have given to audit them. So all those will be audited, but internally when it is writing to the actual log, the server audit filter will make a filter saying like, okay, I want to write only the anything related to object name is address is what I want to write here. Or maybe the other one is like you don't want to give like individual tables, right? For example, in the PIA audit, so maybe if you have a schema like anything related to the confidential information, in the same schema if you have some non-confidential information, probably you can give a filter like where you filter for object equal to that sensitive table or like PIA table. So though you are giving like instead of individual tables, you gave it at a schema level, you can still filter here at a server audit level that anything related to this PIA data table, which is an address table, has to only go to the audit file. So that way you can filter the audit file like. So that is one example, and the other things as I mentioned like the stored procedure and other stuff we can do. But in the interest of the time, I will move to the next slide. So here we are now talking about like in terms of securing the data. So securing the data, see right now we are all dealing like you have a database, you have some kind of information and you have some confidential information or PIA data and all. So whoever is accessing, we are identifying like to identify who has accessed or who has used that information, we want to track that. But what if somebody like takes the database backup, the DBA is taking the database backup and the backup, somebody took the database backup home and tried to restore the database and can read the PIA data. Or like for example like they have like detached that as the database, the actual logs are there, somebody has administrator had access to the file shares and for some reason like the database was offline and he copied the files and maybe in a different server or his local server somewhere they attached the files and reading the data. So nothing will be audited there because that file nobody is we are not auditing his machine, right? We are only auditing the SQL Server activity. And what if like somebody taken this and restored on the UAT machine and they are trying to still read and assuming that UAT box is not audited, so it is again a problem. So when it comes to the HBI, like high business impact, medium business impact kind of data, so we need not only the auditing kind of thing at a server level, but we should also be able to audit or track the information when it is in trust. when it is at rest, it means like the actual data files, actual log files of SQL Server, actual backups. So everything has to be secured. So that way, like even somebody copies the file, they cannot go and attach. When they attach, it will fail, saying like you need a certificate for attaching this. Or when they're trying to restore the database on the UAT environment, it will say like this restore has failed because the thumbprint is not found because you don't have a certificate on this box. So that means you are not an authorized user to restore this backup here. So that level of granularity is required for HBI, MBI data. So it is beyond the auditing. It's kind of encryption is what we need. But different methods of encryption are there. Like you have like a database level, you have column level. But the database level advantage is like this is much more performance-wise better because SQL Server will do the encryption for the entire database. So it doesn't have to do for individual object. It will does at a page level. So as you can see, read the description. So this is about like. So it will do the encryption and decryption at the file level, which is could be a data file or the log file of the database. If you have multiple secondary files, it will also encrypt all those individual files, including the log file. And this information is stored in the database boot record. And whenever the recovery happens, it uses that information to identify whether you are an authorized user to read this information or not. So the advantage with this is like SQL Server will try to read the actual file from the disk, and before it when it is reading the file the information from the disk, so it will try to encrypt that. I mean it will show that it will decrypt that information and it will store it in the memory. So in memory, it will be still like a normal format, but because we won't read the memory related stuff, only SQL Server internally for its operation, it will directly read from the buffer and write to the buffer and all. So at buffer level or in the memory level, it will be still normal information, but as soon as it tries to write to the hard disk, it will encrypt it and write it. Similarly, when it is reading, it will decrypt and then load it into the memory. So the encryption decryption happens only at that when it is writing to the file or reading from the file. But as long as the data stays in the memory, it will be still in the decrypted format. So the advantage here is a performance improvement will be high compared to the column level kind of encryption, because if you have a column level encryption, then every time the column is read, you have to encrypt the column, then you have to decrypt the column to read the information to the user. So the application code has to be modified, things like that. Whereas this is being at a database level, the performance improvement is very high. And we'll have a kind of a demo to see like how we can do that. So now like the next question is, okay, fine, like you are able to when the database is there, we are avoiding like when the database is at rest, like for example, like data files, log files, everything we are kind of encrypting the stuff so that people cannot copy and all. But what about the information that is being transmitted over the network? Like database in the file level, it is encrypted, fine. But when it is transmitting across the network, it won't do any kind of encryption there. But that is beyond the transparent database encryption that we are discussing. So that has to be something for your certificates. You have to use at SQL Server level, like server certificate, client certificate kind of thing, or maybe IPsec or some other channels at communication level we have to do. So that doesn't cover under database encryption, which is like a transparent database encryption. So this is just like for the data at rest, which is like your data log and backups and things like that. But it doesn't cover like how the encryption, like it doesn't encrypt across the channel. So you have to go for either the certificates or like other methods of encrypting at a communication layer level. As you can see the architecture here, the transparent database encryption. So this is kind of a method where we can secure these kind of data. So the architecture which is used to secure this is called as transparent database encryption. This is there right from SQL Server 2000. So it's available in R2 in 2012 everywhere. So how the protection happens is like at the top level, like Windows level, you have like a data protection API. So that is the core API which will be used for protection. So when you install SQL Server, like for example, you went and installed a SQL 2008 or R2 box. So immediately that the installation setup will go and create a service master key. And that service master key will be encrypted by the Windows level data protection API. And when you go and create a database master key, which will be for that specific database, so it's called as a database master key. So that master key will be encrypted by the service master key, which was created by the setup. So each layer, it will be encrypted by its top layer. So that way the master key will be for individual databases. The master key will be holding, it will be in the master database, and that's where like the master key is protecting the individual database level stuff. So database level, what you have is like it's called as a database encryption key. So any objects like all these files of backups of all these databases are protected internally by the database encryption key, which internally is protected by master key and service master key and DP API. So that's how the hierarchy goes like. So how this happens, we'll have a demo to get a better understanding here. So as you can see in the architecture, like basically the master key will be protected using a certificate. We'll create something like a certificate, and the database encryption key will be protected by the certificate what we create there. And so once the database is enabled for encryption, it's like asynchronous option. So you may already have like terabyte database. So when you enable the encryption, it doesn't mean like on the fly it will go and encrypt all these terabyte kind of thing. So there will be a background process will be running. So it will try to encrypt like page by page. It will try to do the encryption. So it will take some time, but eventually like it won't happen instantaneously. So it has some certain time factor, like behind the scene, the background process will eventually encrypt the data files and log files. And until that encryption is done, it will not allow you to take a database offline or take a file offline. It doesn't allow you to do kind of other things that in the next slide that we are showing here. Like, so probably before going to this slide, we can go for a demo so that you have a better understanding on how this encryption is happening. So let me go and we can even use the 2012 thing also here. So let me open here. So I have a file called the transparent database encryption. So this transparent database encryption is the kind of a thing provided in SQL Server right from 2008 and everywhere, R2 and 2012. So this is a technology where we can provide data at rest. So we can leverage this feature for protecting the HBI or MBI or MBI plus kind of data. So what I'm doing is I am connected to my 2012 box. I can run the same stuff in 2008 R2 also. So I am creating a brand new database, blank database called as HBI audit. So it's a simple database, and so let me change the context to the database here and create one table here. So I'm just creating one table which has like some few columns, and I'm inserting one record here. So I have a database with one table. So now the first step for going through these encryption process or the TDE encryption is first we need to create a master key. So because SQL Server is installed here and Windows operating system is there, the DP API is there, and SQL setup is installed here, so already a service master key is available. So by now, like already I have those two things available, which OS has taken care of one thing and another thing took care by SQL setup. So now all I have to start with is a master key. So I use the master database here. And now I go and create a master key. So whenever I'm creating a master key, I have to give like I have to protect it with a password. So I just gave like one password to protect this master key. So these keys and passwords and all has to be shared into a different location, or you can use like extensible key module or some other way to protect those passwords or certificates and things like that. So after the master key is created, so then like what we will do is like we will create a certificate. The purpose of the certificate is to protect the master key. So in addition to this, so let me go here and create a certificate. So I have given a certificate name and I have given a subject here. So when I'm creating a certificate is basically it's kind of like symmetry key to protect the different layers here. Like we can protect a database key or master key or things using the certificate. So I didn't give any parameter for expiry. So by default, it will be 1 year will be the expiry date of the certificate. But SQL Server encryption will not stop just because the certificate is expired. So right now the start date and date like we can provide, and it's up to the certificate administrators to go and renew the certificate. But it doesn't stop the encryption like just because the certificate is expired. So now I created a certificate here. I ran that already. So then what I have to do is I have to take the backup of the certificate, because we are trying to use the certificate for protecting the keys. So first thing we have to do is to first take the backup of the certificate, and that way like this is the certificate we have to use every time we have to restore this database or we have to attach or detach this database. So this certificate has to be used at that time. So it is only required if it's a different server. If I am doing it on the same server, if I am restoring, I don't need to have a certificate and other thing, because already all the certificate, everything is available on the box. So I can directly restore onto this one. If I drop this database, I can restore on this data server without any problem. Only when I take it to a different instance, that is when all these certificates and stuff is required. So that's where we are trying to back up here. So now after I I created a certificate, I back up the certificate to this file. So I hope I ran this. So let me see that. Okay, now let me see that folder, whether that certificate is present or not. So this is the folder where I have so this is the path I have given for the, so it's under D: training. Okay, it is already there, so I have tried to open the file. So this is the path and this is the file. HBA cert backup is the certificate backup, and there is a kind of private key for the certificate, so that is also backed up here. So now how we use the certificate? So first, like, we need to go back to the database context. So now that I have this database, I try to create an encryption key, which is at a database level encryption key. So far earlier what we created is a master key, which is at a master level. We created the master key, and now what we are trying to create is a database encryption key. So because I want to encrypt, or like a database encryption I have to do for HBI audit, so I have to create a database encryption key for this in this database context. So here the algorithms, right now I'm using a 256-bit thing, AES 256, but we can use like 1020 different types are there. So very strong encryption things can be given. So when I'm giving the database encryption key, I will say this encrypt by the server certificate, which is the certificate that we created here. So that means this database encryption key is protected by the certificate called HBA cert. So once the certificate, so that means I created a key and it is protected by the certificate, and on top of the certificate, like, we have a master key which is protecting this database encryption key as well as the certificate. Now that we are done with this, so we can go and enable the encryption. So that means now the database is kind of background thread will be started and the database shows. So right now the status 3 indicates like it's encrypted. So what this means is, like, in addition to the HBI audit, you also find like TempDB got encrypted, because any one database, if you are enabling for encryption, automatically it will encrypt like TempDB, because you may have references to TempDB, and whenever those references are there, so it will try to encrypt both the TempDB as well as the current database. So one database, if you enable for encryption, so you will also have like one for the TempDB, one entry you will always have like. So that means number 2 shows in progress, because it has only one table. Instantaneously the encryption has completed. But if you had like maybe like a lot of tables and all, it may take additional time. But so it definitely it should not take like several days or like that, but it should be very fast, because it's a metadata level. Whatever you are reading, so that information it gets encrypted here. So if you see here the database encryption keys, so it will have this information here. So when you are taking here like the sys databases, you can find that state as this database is encrypted. So what this means, like now this encryption means, like I can still read these tables, whatever is in this database. Like for example, I have a table created earlier here, like table A. So if I query like table A, I'm just selecting from this table, I will still be able to read directly all the data what is there here. So this is not meant for encrypting the actual data, because I have the certificate here. That means I'm authorized to see here. So this HBA data, or this transparent database encryption we use for HBA data, this is only for encrypting for data at rest, right? Which means like only we are protecting the files, not the actual content. Because I have the certificate and all the keys in hand, that means I'm authorized user to view this information. So I can use it, but I cannot try to detach it or restore it to a different box or things like that. So that's what this indicates here. So now if I take let me take the backup of this database to a particular folder here. So I took the backup of this database. So now that this database is encrypted, so now if I go and restore this database into another instance, that is when it will ask for this encryption and all. But what I unfortunately did is I did this with 2012, so now I cannot restore this onto the 2008 R2 because it's not backward compatible. So let me try to do the same stuff in the R2 instead of 2008. So probably I have to go and remove this particular thing here. Or maybe just for the demo purpose, let me try to see if that restore thing, whether it will give that error message or not, just for a temporary thing. So let me try to restore here, like anyway, this restore should not. Okay, so because this is like a different, the backward compatibility is not there, I cannot do this. So I need to do this from the, I do not have one more instance of SQL Server 2012. So I cannot restore this database there. So let me go and do one thing. So let me delete the HPI audit here. First I'll drop the keys and all. So first we need to drop the database encryption key here. Okay, I need to select HB audit as the database here. Okay. I'm in a different database context now. Okay. Drop the key. First we need to drop the encryption key here. Okay, so I need to set the encryption off. Then I need to drop the encryption key. Then I need to drop the certificate. Then I need to drop the master key here. Okay, I think something else I need to, cannot drop the master because the certificate is encrypted by it. So I did drop the certificate here. Okay, maybe it's a different name. The certificate name what we use, let me see. So it is used HBA CERT, I think is the name I have used. So let me drop the certificate called HBA CERT. Okay, now I can go ahead and drop the master key. So now I also want to go and clean up this database so that because I want to restore this at a later point of time. So I'll just do the same exercise here with the R2 instance instead. So right now I am connected. So this is like my R2 instance. So for example, so this is my R2 instance. So I'll try to open the file in the R2 instance. So I'll do the same exercise on R2 database because R2 database backup I can restore on 2012, right? It's like backward compatible. So let me go ahead and quickly create this database and then okay, I created this database. I'm using this database. Let me create these tables. Let me do the same kind of exercise once again. Okay, so already I have a master key. This is in a different server instance. So I need to drop the master key here. Okay, I also have the certificate. Okay, I'm not sure whether I dropped the database key. I hope I have already dropped this. Okay. Okay, so let me go ahead and drop the master key here if everything is done. So I hope I have already dropped the master key, but okay, it's this in the master database context. Okay, so now let me go ahead and recreate the database here on this box. So this is R2, so I am on R2. Okay, the database is already created just now, so I hope the tables are created. Data is inserted already. So then let me try to create the master key again. So I created a master key. Now I'm going and creating a certificate. So then I'm trying to back up the certificate, but already this path we have some certificate here, so I need to go and remove these stuff here, and let me go ahead and create the backup of the certificate. So after I backed up the certificate, I'm going and creating an encryption key in the context of that HBA audit database. So I think this cert is HBA cert. Does it say giving the HBA cert as the certificate name? Oh, it looks like I didn't run this statement. Oh, yeah, I did run this statement. No, it's already created. Backup. Okay, backup is already created for the certificate. So let me go ahead and create the encryption key. So the encryption key, it says you do not have the server certificate HBA cert. HBA cert, it says it's not there. So let me drop the certificate once and recreate this. Certificate is dropped. To create this, so I'm trying to create the backup once again. Let me try once again this time to see whether the encryption key can be created. It still has some kind of issues, like it doesn't exist or you do not have the permission. It says the encryption by server certificate is what we have given. So maybe something got messed up here. So anyway, so the idea is like after the certificate is created, so then what we will be doing is the same thing what we did for the 2012 one. So once we enable the encryption, after I take the backup here, so the backup will be there. When I try to restore this on a different instance, so I'll get an error called that certificate thumbprint is not there, or those kind of errors. So that time what you need to do is the process to go and restore is so whoever is authorized user, so if it's an authorized thing, what they will do is so on the other server, brand new server where you are trying to install restore this backup, so first we go and create a master key on that server, then we go and create a certificate on that server, and that certificate when we are creating, we will say that from the file equal to this file. So we will provide them the certificate file, maybe because it's authorized to use, so we will send them the file like this. This is the certificate file. So they will say create the certificate from a file that we provided, like this is the file name where the certificate is information is there, and the private key for the certificate is what the private key file what we have. So we will send them both the actual certificate file, and in addition to that we will provide them the private key, also the password for the decryption. So once we provide these details, on the other server they will run this command like create the certificate, decryption by password, whatever here. So this certificate will be created there. So once this master key and this certificate is there, then when we try to restore this database, it will allow us to restore the database, because it now knows that there is a certificate present here, and this certificate when it loads, it knows like this certificate was originally belongs to this specific database called HBA audit. So in that case, it will allow the restore. So same thing in case of attach detach also. When we are trying to attach, before trying to attach, we have to go and first send them the certificate related information, the certificate as well as the private key information. So once they go and create that in the metadata in the SQL Server level, master level, then only they can go and attach the database. So that way, we are protecting the data at rest basically. So coming back to the slide, so in terms of considerations, when we deal with the encryption, so backup restore is one area where like we have to store the encryptions, we have to store the certificates and private keys. So these can be pushed away to extensible key module or something rather than putting it on the same box. So then like whenever somebody does a restore, so they request for these, and that's how like they will be able to restore. And the compression, normally when you have a compression out of box with SQL Server 2008 and all, native compression is there. But what happens when the database is already encrypted? So encryption and compression will not go like a better way. So already a database is an encrypted database, cannot be compressed much. So that means the compression ratio will be decreased, and that means you won't have a good rate of compression anymore because you have enabled for encryption here. So that is one consideration. And index maintenance operations, so especially when you are doing a maintenance operation, so when the encryption is going on behind the scene through the background process, it will slow down. You cannot do the maintenance at that time. You have to do login as a single user mode to do the maintenance. But this is only to the duration when encryption is getting enabled. But once we get the state as 3, which is like encrypted, I mean, eventually the background thread will complete saying like encryption is completed. So at that time, you can still go ahead and do all the kind of maintenance or whatever. But when it is doing the encryption, at that time, you cannot perform the maintenance. Other considerations like database mirroring and other stuff automatically taken care by the encryption, but replication will not be taken care. Like for example, from the source you is encrypted, but the destination you have a subscriber. So the encryption will not, database encryption, it will not happen to the subscriber. So if you want the subscriber to be encrypted, you have to again go and enable the transparent database encryption on that box. So that is something about these encryption, database encryption, and securing this here. So if you have, so let us discuss like any questions that you have here. We ran out of time, but sorry for that. Like any questions on the encryption stuff or anything on the overall presentation?
No questions, Ravi. We are fine.
Okay, then we'll stop presenting here. So
I think before that, can we address this issue? What Robert was asking: what happens when the server has a failure and the encryption of the data is still happening?
So the encryption module is running and the server is failure. So when it comes online, so that time like the database, the background process will start again. Okay. So the background process it's a asynchronous process or a background process. So it's just like your ghost cleanup or some kind of server process will be behind the scene. So whenever the server is started, like again wherever it has stopped from, so from that place onwards, it will again start the encrypting the data.
Okay, and also one more question he asked about is it a difference for a cluster?
So in case of a cluster, because like this encryption is at a database level, right? So the file will be, you will have only one database related file on the SAN, it will be the SAN storage. So once that is encrypted, the database, in spite of whichever node is owning that resource of SQL Server, encryption will still be available.
Right, Ravi.
Yeah. So because we are encrypting at a database level, right? So irrespective of which node the SQL resources are present, the database name is same and the content is same. So the files are same. So we are only having one copy of the files, right? For each node, we are not having one copy of a file of the database, right? So it's only one SAN storage. We have a combined thing. It's just one copy. So the entire database and all its files, everything will be encrypted.
At the end, one SQL instance only.
Yes. So this is for that database, for that instance, it will be encrypted, and the certificate and its private key is only for that specific database which we encrypted. So similarly, if we have another database which we encrypted, that we have to protect with another certificate and another private key. And whenever we are trying to send it to restore or attach, detach or any other case, we need to go and send them along the certificate and private key of that database also.
Right. Got it.
Okay, then thanks everyone. Like, please share your feedback. Okay.
Sure.
I will upload the videos and the presentation slides to the SharePoint, and I will share that. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a nice evening. Bye.